Okay, this is your instructor, John, here to show you different methods of creating texture in your vector artwork. It looks good, right? We have the bear in the woods. Out of all these flat shapes, some use of gradients, overlapping shapes to suggest depth. And so you could do a lot without adding texture, but texture is one of the elements of art. And it could really add another layer of visual interest and just make your artwork more fun to look at. I'm going to go to View, Trim View, just to show you that that exists. Sometimes you have a lot of extra stuff floating around, and so it's a way just to see only what's on the artboard, so it's fun to go there sometimes. And I'm also going to go to Fit Artboard on Window, so we're seeing it as close as possible. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this tree and I'm going to put a texture in this tree. The most simplest way of adding texture is just doing a fill. So I'm going to click on my fill over here. Because I was playing around with textures earlier, you're seeing a bunch of them here. So you're like, hey, where did you get those textures? They're found down here in this little icon. It looks like a library. So clicking on the library, and there's a whole bunch here. Most of these are different color combinations. We do have patterns, and there's ones that are most specific to textures called textures. So these are preset ones, and I'm looking at this with a large thumbnail view. So by default, you probably would see the small one, and it's hard to see what's going on there. So I do like to click on this upper right option and go for the large thumbnail view. And here you could choose a bunch of different kinds of textures. All right. So these are essentially patterns. You learned how to make patterns in a previous exercise. And these are just preset ones that appeal more to a sense of texture. So it could be that simple, adding texture to an artwork. But as you notice, we're seeing through the texture to what's beneath it or behind it. What if you actually wanted to keep the tree solid and green and then add this texture over the top or mix it in? Yes, there is a way. Let me show you the way. Okay, so let me undo this, go back to our green one. And what we're going to do is use the appearance panel. We're seeing it here, but if you click on these three little dots in the bottom right of the appearance panel, we can see more options for it. So here it is here, or you could go to Window Appearance would be another way to get there. So here's Window Appearance, and what we're seeing is the stroke. There's no stroke, so there's nothing there. And here's our fill, and there's actually a subtle green gradient in that fill. So it's just telling us what we're already seeing here. What you can do here, however, is add a second fill or a third fill, all within the same vector object. So using the same paths and anchor points, but just adding different fill, like a different pie filling into the pie shell. So the first one is for strokes. The second icon is for a fill. So I'm clicking there. You're going to notice that I now have this fill and a copy of it up here. There is a stacking order here. So if I were to change this to some other color, for instance, it's actually covering up what's below. If I were to drag this one down below it, you would see the green is now on top, etc. So just be aware that that is part of the deal. We're also seeing opacity for the stroke, opacity for the fill. I think this particular opacity does everything. If you click on that little drop down, it's an opacity just for that fill, okay? So do you recognize that as well? So it can look like that, a little more simple. But we don't want a red fill, we want a texture. So I'm gonna click on that, and I'm just gonna click on one of these textures, right? I'll do something that's bigger and bolder. So now instead of seeing through the texture to the bear behind it, we're seeing the green. So we have the texture and the green fill all at the same time. So that is super cool. I love it. But wait, there's more. So again, let's bring down this little drop down arrow, see the opacity just for this fill. Click on opacity. So one thing you could do is just simply pull the texture back. When it's black like that, it will just go more towards gray and become washed out, which can look cool for sure. That could be amazing. And then it will eventually disappear as you go towards zero. You can also play with blending mode. So blending mode is this option right next to opacity. I'm going to click on multiply for my first one. Multiply doesn't look that much different, right? If different at all. I'm not sure why it's jumping clear up there. It looks a little bit darker and richer, doesn't it? So you're going to notice the different categories. These all darken, these all lighten, these mix in different ways. And a lot of these just get really weird and are used for very specific purposes. The four most common ones are multiply, screen, overlay, and soft light. Most of the time you're going to use one of those four if you're going to use a blending mode besides normal. So multiply makes things go darker, but then if you back off the opacity, instead of going towards gray, it's actually mixing with the green. Isn't that really cool? So that's a different look. All right, so there's normal. So that's what it looked like with normal, and then that's what it looks like with multiply. So a very different look. Screen will flip-flop it, so you're seeing the black is flip-flopped to white. Overlay tends to be a little bit more subtle, so you typically have to turn the opacity up higher. All right, so that's a really fun way to add texture. I'm not going to go into it, but just like you made patterns in a previous exercise, you could actually create your own patterns that look more textury. But otherwise, you could use the presets, all right? So there's method 1.